that one's perfect and exactly the case.
Hello and welcome to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed. I hope you are having a wonderful time. Put on the swimming lights behind me. We have been doing some fantastic work to bring ourselves up to speed, or to create a map of the history of philosophical thought, or the Dharma, the tradition of learning that we are in. Only about 12 names in that list of the most significance, which is curious. And the 13th name is you. You are in the Dharma lineage. Dharma is a word that means teaching, but also refers to spiritual teaching too. So, we've been doing a lot of work nailing down those key 12 figures and what specifically were their contributions to the tradition. That's been pretty neat. And pretty much from Homer, Xenophanes, Parmenides, and Diotima, they go together because they were both the teacher of Socrates. That's pretty much where it ended. After Socrates, there's Plato, who began the first universities of the West in the academy, and there are teachers who followed him, specifically the teachers of note, Proclus, who did a lot of work on nailing down the dialectic, Plotinus, who talked a lot about what it feels like to have these different these experiences of different states of consciousness and reality, and Damascius, who emphasized the significance of dreams, but of course they were all blocked in some way because after Socrates we lost the technique on how to understand and solve human problems. Pretty noteworthy, considering we are all human beings with problems. So, really significant, the transition from Socrates to Plato. As a result, one of Plato's students was Aristotle, who was not able to overcome his problems either, and that gives us the tradition of materialism, or to think there is no world other than the physical world that we perceive with our senses. And there's various flavors of materialism. You can say, well, reductionism, so anything meaningful you can reduce to its least significant, smallest parts. So a Rembrandt is $5 worth of paint on a $10 canvas, that's all. Feelings are not real, they're just chemicals squirting in your brain, something like that. What else do we have under materialism? Well, we could call it Aristotelianism as well. Reductionism. Well, those are the two big ones, aren't they? Yeah, so we're just stuff. We're just physical stuff, or only the physical world exists. Now, there is another set of ways of thinking that are even further down. There's not even a physical world, nihilism, that kind of thing. But the five that we are working with is the highest state, our first cause, the self, which is also our final cause. We're here to know the self. That's what we've been wondering about lately. Knowledge, to apprehend the model in the realm of being. Understanding, the greatest activity based on that model of being. It's just this distortion of the model, belief. This is the truth because my daddy says so, or my political leader, or my rabbi or minister says so. Jeebus has told me in my heart. So the distortion of the model, belief, and of course the function that results as a consequence of belief, Aristotelian materialism. And that's interesting because Plato was not able to help Aristotle address his beliefs that blocked his movement into metaphysics. So Aristotle had underlying false beliefs that he was attached to, identified with, that of course rejected the world of being, and that's the lineage we're in. Modernism. Now, it's super interesting because Aristotle's teacher was Plato, Plato's was Socrates, Socrates was Parmenides, and Parmenides said the greatest or the worst condition of the mind that you can have, and you have to be on guard for, is to believe that there's no spiritual world, there's no mind that you can experience for yourself. There's no knowable reality of being or mind. The very thing Aristotle had. So only in a couple of generations that worst condition came to be, and that's where we are in as moderns in 2020s. 2025 at the time of recording. But the new name after Socrates that brings us back to where we left off is Dr. Pierre Grimes, who rediscovered philosophical midwifery, the activity of solving problems, was therefore able to remove his blocks so he could read philosophy and recover the dialectic applied to truth. Discovered dream analysis, the dialectic that you apply to your dreams to do both. And the final thing that we can do, or the fourth part in the dialectic on the dialectic, sharing it. He wrote a book. So the greatest figure in thought and philosophy and learning and humanity in this Hellenic tradition, the tradition of understanding, is Dr. Pierre Grimes. And after Dr. Pierre Grimes comes you, because we're reading his book. That's the significance of the book. We've been saying, holy fuck, this book bangs so hard, because every time we read it, it drops another wisdom bomb on our asses. It says something fantastic, profound, needed to be said, and usually said in very few words. Beautifully put. But now we're seeing why it's a banger. It is the mean between us and philosophy, or the history of Western thought, philosophical, spiritual thought. Pretty neat. So, Socrates really emphasized the significance of dreams and the necessity for dream analysis to reach our goals. Because dreams can bring you into the high states that we seek with our dialectic on truth, and can bring to the surface negative states that highlight your false beliefs that are the cause of your problems. But also, in reflecting on the nature of the dream maker, we can discover for it to function like that, it must know the parts to recognize our part and the stages in development, but also the whole of our lives, the whole of spiritual development, the whole of the meaning, the whole of the destiny of mankind, the ultimate purpose to which we're all moving, the whole of spirituality, the whole of the model. So it seems like the dream maker is itself what we're after, or we want to raise our own state of being, apprehension of the model and activity to that of the dream maker. Isn't that neat? So, as Socrates' big contribution to the lineage after Parmenides and Diotima was, hey, dreams. Make sure you're doing dreams. And we are returning to where we left off through Dr. Pierre Grimes to Socrates. We need to pick up this dream work stuff, especially as it's our guide for the other two activities, perfection and purification, but also because it's our model, we are going to gain insight into what we are ourselves. Oh, and Parmenides' teacher was Xenophanes, who said the ultimate is one. That's God, really. Oh, and it's the whole of seeing, hearing, and thinking right now. And what we discovered last time is a question. If it's the whole of God that is the self that is seeing, hearing, and thinking as a whole right now, What kind of a whole has no parts? Oh, and seeing as we can recognize the model where whole and part sits as a part, so we know the whole of those, that self-er set of terms that we use in cognition and perception, whole and part. Everything we've seen is a whole and a part. Everything that we think is to bring the parts into the whole. Makes sense? Everything that exists has parts. This has a part there and that's a part there, but has to maintain itself as a whole. The whole and part is itself a part within a greater whole of pairs. So because they are aspects of the self-logos, we call them self-ers. Whole and part, same and different. So we can equally ask, as we ask, what kind of a whole that is seeing, hearing, and thinking right now is God, and also a kind of one. What kind of one is God? Is the self? Is what is seeing, hearing, and thinking? What kind of one is that? That is our ultimate goal, to know the self. What kind of whole? What kind of whole has no parts? Oh, let's go through the list. What kind of same can never be different? What kind of state or likeness? What does it feel like to never be unlike? What kind of likeness is never unlike? What kind of rest will always be at rest because it can never be in motion? What kind of unlimitedness or freedom can never be limited or blocked or diminished? What kind of eternity or immortality can never degrade because it can never participate in time? What an interesting kind of one we can wonder about. And I wonder what the relationship this one has to a different kind of one that we call the model. A kind of eternity or immortality that also is the whole of all time. It is eternity because it's all time all at once. It's unrest. It's at rest because its motion turns about to know itself at all moments, at all points. So it reaches its conclusion because it's the greatest kind of rest, being at the ultimate kind of motion. What kind of a whole has all of the parts? The best kind of whole with all of the parts ever possible? What kind of sameness also accounts for all possible division or difference or expressions of life and creation? What kind of state of mind brings into this kind of oneness everything that was unlike it? Is this model of sameness that also accounts for all possible division or differences a necessary model for human justice and laws, because we need to account for all possible diversity for evolution and growth, and the fact that every person is different, but also we need to have a kind of unity and sameness and spirit and ultimate goal that guides us. That is, unlike capitalism, how do we hurt 99% of people for the short-term physical enjoyment of 1%? That's not a thing that can bring us into a sameness, because it keeps us different. How about, are we all self? Are we all the same self? Do we all have the same mind? Are we all in the same stage of evolution from beliefs that cause problem into understanding that can solve them? Therefore, is the spirit of logos or understanding and the activity to master the art of dialectic to reach our highest goal, the first and final cause, the self, through the love of understanding, is that the ethos that can bring everyone into a same that accounts for all difference? Bring us into a whole that accounts for all parts? Interesting. So this second kind of model, same in all difference, whole in all parts, is the model of justice and beauty for all physical things in the physical world. So instead of having this party or that party based on this opinion or this belief and that belief, and we recognize that's stupid because beliefs are all different, but there's no sameness. In fact, beliefs are in opposition to sameness because you are a limit. You're limited by belief. And once you become free, you don't have to believe this or that group, this or that leader, this or that tribe that makes you different. So if belief is the lesser of the two terms, always in conflict with the greater, we can realize that no politics or religion should ever be about belief, in principle. That's why we've always had all this conflict we've been in. Therefore, only one political party. Understanding, dianoia. Why? Because if there's a model that accounts for all same and difference, a whole of all parts, then it's going to be universal or a principle. Universally applicable, and if it's universally applicable, it also has to be intelligible, that we can grasp it directly in the experience of that model, the kind of ousia of the mind knowing itself. But it also has to be understandable for its application, but also understanding is the kind of focused reflection or meditation that opens us up to experience the model as a whole. Therefore, the one political party, rationally, that we will eventually discover if we are to save our human race, is the understanding party, dianoia. Philodianoia, the love of understanding. Just as there's one model for a healthy body, but anybody can become a doctor. You don't have some doctors come along and say, well, I have a belief that medicine should harm some patients who is not my tribe or my team. No, we don't allow that. That's stupid. That's immature. Therefore, there are three kinds of fundamental models. The highest, that mysterious whole without parts, same that's always the same and can't even be degraded into difference. The pure one, that is the whole of seeing and hearing and thinking right now, thanks to Xenophanes, that we are seeking. There is the model from being, the whole of all parts. That's our model for our excellent or ideal activity in the physical world. And the third model, it's distortion. The model that you get not from the whole of parts, but from the parts only. Derived only from physical senses in the physical world. Imitation of people pretending to be wise from childhood. Imitations of physical perceptions. Belief. You believe someone else. You believe based on clan, You believe the authority figure. So belief is the distortion of the model of truth, which we need in our world. The Logos party, or the Dianoia party, the understanding party. And that model even is itself a shadow or reflection of an even higher model, the pure whole, the pure one, the one self. And as there are three models, there are three kinds of activities based on those models. Belief, the activity, the use of logos or reasoning, is materialism. There's Aristotle. There's our degradation from Plato, from after losing the ability to solve problems caused by beliefs. The functioning of beliefs is Aristotle, materialism. The world's just there's no value in human life. There's no, lives don't matter. Any lives matter, none, no lives matter. It's just a physical dog-eat-dog world of trying to manipulate physical people and enslave physical people who have no feelings, no empathy possible. It's just a material shit show where we try and manipulate others for our own material gains. Capitalism, materialism. Philosophy, it's called Stoicism. If anyone says they're a Stoic, they're saying I'm a materialist. I like to use the language of philosophy, but really, I am the activity of belief. And that's modern philosophy, of course. I believe Kant. Really? No. Well, I believe Hume. No, I'm a Hegelian. I believe Hegel. Who gives a shit? It's all bad. Because beliefs are bad in principle. So the activity, or how people think based on unsuspected false beliefs they have yet to address, that is in opposition to the model, in opposition to the whole, in opposition to mind, being, and soul, in opposition to the self, in opposition to the logos, in opposition to meaning, in opposition to purpose, in opposition to even empathy, materialism. Why would you have empathy for another human being if they're just a physical object? Sexism, racism, justifying slavery, all that horseshit is the activity based on the model of belief. Modern science and materialism. Enough thinking to get you nuclear bombs and hand grenades, but nothing more. In other words, that's the significance of what we're doing here. Because the activity of belief can end human existence. Now, you might recognize that as the modern Democrats. I'm not a believer in fascism like the right wing is, but we're not going to stop them because we have no principles. We're just trying to get our bag. So, the name for that, materialism, or modern Dems, or liberals, is strict dualism. There is only parts, there is no connection to a whole. So one rule for me, one rule for thee. We get to have our lavish parties and food, and the rest of the people get to starve. You have to be a slave, but I'm not going to be a slave. We're going to make laws to say that you can't have healthcare, but we have healthcare. That's the use of thinking called strict dualism. The activity based on false beliefs. So, as there are three models, the distorted model from physical perception only in opposition to mind, or the whole. The model of mind as a whole of all parts, and even a model beyond that, the whole without parts, the self. We can ask, what's the activity of the greater models? The activity of the model of the whole of all parts, the one that we need for justice, that we call ousia, or being, or mind. Knowledge with a capital A is the cognitive function of apprehending it, nous in Greek. The activity based on knowledge, or nous, or that model, is understanding. That's what we're here to develop. Therefore, the activity that brings about the model and uses the model to help people either create the excellence of our world, and also the second thing we must do, address problems, not by punishing people ever. Punishment isn't needed because all problems are understandable, because it's simply the activity, materialism, justifying and supporting the false model belief, which in nature is in opposition to everything good, true, and one. Goodness, truth, and oneness. Always as a principle. So understanding can solve problems without just keeping the cycle of violence and ignorance alive, but also it can apprehend that model. Two functionings. On its model and on what's lower than itself, understanding. So there we have, that's the conclusion of what we've been working on the last week or so. Let's see it on the board. The board's gone insano mode. Let me fix this. Let's bring into a conclusion what we've just reviewed. We have a question. Hey, what kind of a hole has no parts or can't be touched, can't be participated in by parts? That gives us the model of and if it's a model, there has to be some way of knowing it. So it has a nature that we can apprehend. That's called ousia. The way that we can turn around and know the model or ousia, or the knowingness of self. We also said, let's make some more room with the other. We also said, hey, by the way, there is no left or right party. That's insane. I mean, you don't have a harming patients party and a harming patients doctors, and next door you can walk into the helping patients surgery. No, that's stupid. There's only one model of surgery and it always benefits. Does it just benefit men and hurt women? Only in the Dark Ages, baby. We've realized that that's stupid. We don't do that anymore. Therefore, equally so, there is a model that we can apprehend, which is the word ousia. I know it's a funny word. It means the ability to know it all at once or grasp it with your mind. Of mind itself, or being, the realm of pure being. And we said, hang on a second, there must also be a part that isn't touched by the whole, just as this is the whole of all parts, the model for therefore justice. So instead of there being a right and left political party, one day we can wake up and say, hang on a second, what have we been doing? Killing each other? Why? Because this guy had a belief. Adam Smith had a belief that supply and demand curves will magically make every problem get fixed. Because this religious guy had a belief that they are the chosen people and they get to genocide and take all the stuff. Because this capitalist had a belief that the poor are poor because they suck. They haven't tried hard enough. Jeff Bezos works 100,000 times as hard as any of his workers. That's a stupid belief. Yeah, no shit, because beliefs are, in principle, stupid. This is the model of justice and beauty. And also, not just the justice and beauty of society, but each individual too. Justice, beauty, and excellence. It's the model, the whole of all parts. Same, by the way, what we have been also doing is we can replace the word whole for same. Same and different. A sameness that accounts for all differences, like any society must do. And so why are beliefs dumb? Because they are belief. Beliefs are from other people. If you understand something, why would you want to believe anyone else? Belief. Which is the false model, the harmful model, or the conflict, the model for human conflict. And also bad and harmful belief. The root cause of all human problems. Harming, harmful. There we go. Why? Because belief is a part in opposition to the whole. Has to be in opposition, otherwise we would seek our benefit. There would be nothing keeping part different from the whole. Why would you want to be a part if the whole is better? So, for each, there also has to be an activity. Run out of space on the board. Let's move this to the top. Whole. And part down here. There has to be an activity. When you use belief as the model, I believe this or that sign, Aristotle really. There is an activity. Materialism. The modern Dems. There is no whole, there is no principles, let the fascists take over. And anyone who speaks about a model, ban them from the Majority Report Twitch chat, which happened to me. Can you believe it? This guy, one of the greatest streamers on the platform, banned from the Majority Report Twitch chat because I agreed with Emma when she said the modern left, the Dem establishment left, don't have principles, so they're allowing the fascists to come to be. And she even went ahead and said they're even more responsible because they're supposed to be doing good, but they have been creating the conditions for believers to take over. We need a universal model or principle, or as Sam would say, tentpole, so we can have universal principles that apply to everyone, not one rule for thee and one rule for me. I did the great crime of agreeing with her in Twitch chat. But because not everyone's as great as Emma, there are people who are materialists, who are the fascist jackboots, the foot soldiers of believers who try and get in between good people and truth. That's the Twitch moderators of the Majority Report. And they said, fuck you, you're banned. No conversation, no reflection, no understanding. Just banned. A microcosm of the macrocosm of the left. That's why this is the worst cognitive function. Number 5, materialism. Also in opposition to what benefits Emma, what benefits the show, what benefits everyone listening. Fuck you, says the Twitch moderator. That's why we had Beefgate that broke the internet earlier when I was doing that. Beefgate, huge beef. Two of the greatest content creators on the platform.
Freaks.
A bunch of freaks.
That's anti-feminist in some way?
Thought so. So, materialism. The lowest cognitive function that we have, or the activity based on the model of belief. So if belief is the fake model or pseudo model. Materialism is the harmful activity. Can only do bad. Nuclear bombs and hand grenades. Activity. Harmful activity. From the harmful model. Necessarily, because if there wasn't some magnetic force pushing it away from the whole, because the parts are the lesser of the idea of part and whole, and whole is the greater, wouldn't you want what's greater? Wouldn't you want your benefit? So we can ask the question, why are human beings so violently and genocidally opposed to their own benefit, to their own goodness? So here we have the model of goodness or benefit. Why are human beings opposed to truth? Why are we opposed to oneness or to unify our human race? Sexists, racists, fascists, etc. Why are we blowing up the planet for the shareholder profits to go up? Why must the billionaires be trillionaires at the expense of unity? Feeding children? Why? Because there has to be some force that the parts have in opposition to oneness, unity, goodness, benefit, and truth. Necessarily. Otherwise, the part wouldn't stay apart, it would join the whole. Not forever, but at some period of our human development, because whole and part, as primary principles of reason, experience, or the logos, everything you've seen is a whole and part, everything you've experienced, everything you've thought about is a whole and part. Therefore, it's a paradigm or model of the physical world. So this is the model of being that is the cause of the world of becoming. So this is also the world of becoming down here, the physical world. Physical world. Notice, how do we function in a good way in the physical world? We use our mind to reason. So anyone who says, oh, there's no mind, it's just evolution and chemistry and physical things, and they are materialists functioning in a harmful way, which is the activity of the harmful model of belief. But notice that those people lack empathy, they're cruel, and they're also stupid. Whereas the people who do good in the world and care and actually can contribute use their mind. Use their mind. Because the mind has the capacity to also see the whole. So this is the being or mind. So materialists function in a harmful activity because they say there is no mind. There is no model. That's all woo-woo, they say. So the establishment Democrats or the liberals say, hey, this AOC and Bernie Sanders, they can go to hell because they're trying to help everyone. We're just trying to get our bag because there is no principles. We should just compromise with the fascists. We should allow them to take away healthcare, etc. World of mind. So, just as there is a lesser activity of materialism that rejects the whole, there is also a greater activity it's number 3. So the fake model we can say is number 4 in terms of stages of cognitive development or ways of making sense and functioning in the world. The activity, the greater activity, understanding. And that's the art of the dialectic. So those who recognize the significance of understanding can go on to say, hey, by the way, while I'm naturally good at it, I might be a naturally good basketball player because I'm 7 foot tall, but there is also a skill that I need to learn, a skill that I can learn, that I can perfect into mastery. Once I can see through that skill and function automatically, there's a mastery. And then if I use that mastery to benefit others, that's an art, and that's called the dialectic. So we want to reach out to the people who have who are naturally 7 foot tall in their soul. They have a good mind and a good heart. So they're naturally stepping out of beliefs, naturally stepping out of materialism to wonder about causes of problems, principles that are universal, because causes and principles are in here because they have a causal scope over everything in the physical world, allowing you to understand the cause of problems. So you're not just killing people you don't like, you're solving problems. Also, you can see the sameness. Believers only see difference. You're the wrong color, I hate you. You're the wrong gender, I hate you. You're the wrong religion, I hate you. You're a liberal, you're a lefty, I want your tears. I want the rich people to fuck all of us so I can see you suffer. They can't see sameness. Those people who have empathy are also the people who are 7 foot tall in their soul. They have a natural ability to participate in principles, causes. That's understanding. Understanding. We need to reach out to them and say, hey, you're really great. You're the best basketball player in town. But we need NBA caliber souls. Which is why Dramagate 2025, this beef with the Majority Report, the materialist moderators of the Twitch chat who immediately shut down the logos, no conversation, just authoritarian, so also acting out of their harmful beliefs. That's why the internet got so broken. And this beef went so viral, because they prevented any possible connection between a dialectician and someone who's in the NBA talking with someone who's 7 foot tall in high school, Emma. Someone who has a natural inclination towards understanding. So, hey, by the way, you're great at basketball. Now, learn the skill. Master it. Master it to the point where you can function through it, allowing you to benefit people by understanding what the one true political party needs to be. Not based on belief, the one that you've been intuiting needs to exist anyway. Like, why do we allow fascists who want to hurt people to run for office? The only way they can get in is by lying to people, using their money. That shouldn't be a thing. That's why you're awesome. But learn the skill, master it, use it to benefit. That's art. So you can be a NBA player. The skill of understanding, or the greater activity based on the greater model, is called the dialectic. As souls who exist in our physical lifetime here, this is the meaning of life. Therefore, because it can look down and address the fake model and the cause of our negative functioning, but it also can understand what it must be using as its model, which is a kind of preparation for the model itself, or the ousia, which we call, in common parlance, meditation. This reflection and focus with understanding on the model is the model for all meditation. You might say, hang on a second, I've done meditation that didn't have understanding, that didn't recognize there was a model. In fact, I've done many. I've done breath meditation, I've done sitting meditation, I've done counting, I focused on a picture of some Indian dude who they told me was enlightened. I'll ask you this, how successful was it? Being honest. Did you ever separate your soul from the body and apprehend the brilliant light of pure being? Very rarely happens. Why? Well, it's missing the activity. Sometimes it can happen, especially if you're mixing some mushrooms into your soup for dinner. Or if you're sitting under a waterfall or something and you're torturing yourself and you need to somehow push through a traumatic experience, maybe. But in principle, that's kind of, you're only taking a piece of the puzzle. All yogas have in principle a separation of the soul from the physical world of becoming to directly apprehend the model. That's mind knowing itself all at once, a kind of out of time that also contains the whole of time. That's the model. So formally, the true model, or the true activity of meditation to perceive that model, is called understanding. The dialectic. When you apprehend the model all at once, we can call that number 2. So we've got materialism, harmful activity, down here in opposition to the whole. Its model, belief, the root cause of that activity, and therefore the cause of human problems. 5, 4, 3, the activity here of the part of the whole, that the part of parts that also connects with the whole. So this whole and parts overlapping. The activity is understanding 3, the model is 2. Then we move into number 1. Is this pre-recorded? No, but it is being recorded for your watching enjoyment after. You can watch it on YouTube or a Twitch VOD. So, our question is, what kind of a one isn't the whole of all parts or the model for justice in our physical world, but is the kind of whole that doesn't have parts? How can we know the self? How can we grasp the ultimate model, which is the first cause of everything else, the cause of the metaphysical world of being or mind, the core, which is itself the model for the physical world, but we as souls down here have a journey to know the self. How do we know the self? Well, we've seen that there is an activity in 3 based on the model here. Understanding can solve human problems, create the model for excellence, but also understanding is the principle or the paradigm or the fundamental activity of meditation itself, because you can understand the model. How do we know we have minds, but it's not just experience that exists? Good question. Carry that question with you as we read this text and put all the pieces together and see how you can sufficiently answer that question. It's good. Good question. You need a question. Why do you need a question? Because to have a question about something in this realm, mind like you have, is necessary for meditation. What we are saying is the activity to reflect on such a question is understanding. You need to develop an By the way, if someone told you, well, I believe we have a mind, it would not affect you, right? Do you have an answer? No, that's stupid. If I said, oh yeah, I believe it is, what would you say? Why the fuck would you care what I believe? See, beliefs are stupid. Beliefs are for babies. What are you going to believe, daddy? Who gives a shit? Understand it is to see it for yourself. In principle, you won't be satisfied with someone else's dumbass opinions. Why would you want to be a little bitch to someone else? Believe them. Maturity is seeing it for yourself. How can you see it for yourself? How can you be content that your question has been answered? That's the dialectic. Can you explain what it is? Define it? Definition? The mind, can you say what it is in relation to itself? By the way, can you really understand whether or not we have a mind unless you can perceive it? Can you perceive it? And if it doesn't function, you see things based on how they function, right? If I said, oh yeah, there is a mind, you'd be like, well, how can I see it? You're saying that there's a high reach of the mind where I can know everything all at once, experienced as bliss, eternity, the entirety of evolution all at once? Holy fuck, how can I experience it? Yeah. Don't get it. Brother, I'm asking you a question. I'm not taking your word for it. I'm getting opinions. Don't. Opinions are for babies. Opinions are for little bitches who are a little slave to someone else. You want my opinions, Jesus' opinions, Muhammad's opinions? I'm teaching you how to use your brain. No, your mind. See it for yourself. Fuck opinions. You want a racist opinion, a sexist opinion? Who gives a shit? Can't do anything. You're either already agreeing with the opinions because your parents happened to have them when you were a little baby, or you don't agree and then you just ignore them. It's a lose-lose. Learn to think. That's what we're doing. By the way, your question is about mind. To understand whether or not there's a mind, shouldn't you be able to define it? Can you experience it unless you see how it demonstrates or functioning, how it functions? By the way, don't you want to see the effect of that functioning on other things? How can I use my mind for a good relationship, to reach enlightenment, to know the meaning of life, to remove my problems and my injustice that I do to myself and others unknowingly, and create excellence within my life? Division. Or the subject in it towards itself, just talk about it itself, definition. How does that thing you've defined, see how it rolls over, function, self to others? What are we using? We're using the two most primary building blocks of perception and cognition, self and other. The first thing you perceive is that's me and that's not me. So when I'm hungry, I don't feed the dog because the dog's not myself. So we can even take this self and other back into this model of whole and parts and the crossover. The whole of all parts, the model of justice. We could say, hey, maybe self and other. Self and other. Which really elevates the model that we've been building of reality and personal development, because it's not just a whole that's not touched by parts, or a pure whole without parts as the highest model, a whole of all parts as the greater model, the model of mind knowing itself, the enlightenment experience, and the model of justice. Every political party needs to have this. Well, the one political party. The model of understanding, how to function in a good way, not opinions. And part that's disconnected from the whole, in opposition to the whole, beliefs, opinions, the cause of conflict and its function, materialism. We're not just talking about this as a purely rational exercise of thinking. So long as we recognize there's another duad, the primary duad, the duad we've been using all the way along, self and other. The duad we've been using in our reading, in our learning, in our dialectic. In the lineage of philosophy. You can't be in the game unless you're naturally curious. You want to know yourself, know the self. And you can't settle for mediocrity. Homer showed us that it can happen. Even the worst Achilles can become the best. Even wise people like Odysseus have problems they need to address. And if you reach the end, you'll be like Hercules or Penelope, the ideal. Xenophony says, hey, by the way, God is one, and it's the whole that is seeing, hearing, and thinking right now. So our question of whole is connected to one. So we can go back to this model of whole and parts and also say one. So let's bring in Xenophanes, the first philosopher we have of his stuff written down, and say one. The whole of God that is seeing, hearing, and thinking right now is one. Which means, what's the opposite of one? We need a lesser of one. We can have that as a question. But then after Xenophanes, he taught Parmenides. Parmenides says you won't realize the truth of self, the truth of reality. You won't realize the self unless you learn the dialectic. Oh, and never ever think you can't know. That's the worst condition of the soul. So if anyone says you can't know reality, you can't know the mind of God, you can't know where you were before you were born and when you go when you die, you can't know the model of justice, say, fuck you, your opinions are wrong, I'm not listening to you, daddy and mummy. Says, Parmenides, or minister, imam, someone who sounds like your mum and dad are the people you listen to usually. So don't give up. Don't give up. So what does the dialectic use that we get from Parmenides? The dialectic is what we were sharing with our friend. How can he elevate his thinking from just throwing around opinions like a baby and actually learn how to think for himself, use his own mind? You use self and other. He has a question about mind. Let's encourage him to read a text that, like the ones we're reading, that reflect the logos. So a Balboa translation of Plato or anything by Pierre Grimes, and see if he can carry that question in his mind. Requires courage. So it's unlikely he'll do it because it requires character, requires openness, it requires courage. These are rare qualities. But, you know, there's always a chance. Can he talk about the question, mind? What is mind itself? Not how it functions to others, but in relation to itself, definition. Can he take that definition and see how it functions to others? Demonstration. That functioning, how does it relate to other areas of my life? How does my mind affect my relationships? How does it affect my goals? How does it affect my gaming? And then from all of those effects, is there some thing I can synthesize these two other to other, so the functioning to other others, into a single other that I can take with me back to the self to gain a deeper insight into the question of mind to begin with? That's a conclusion. So the first philosopher, Homer, said it can be done. Here are some figures to keep in your mind that you can do it. So then often he says, hey, by the way, there's a kind of whole that is seeing, hearing, and thinking right now. That's God, and it's also a kind of one. So we want to know what kind of a one is that which is seeing, hearing, and thinking right now. Parmenides says you can't find that answer unless you learn the dialectic. This is the dialectic. After him came Socrates, who said, well, Diotima, who says you can perfect this in an ideal relationship. If you and your beloved both seek this excellence to know the nature of real self, the excellence of yourself, to be yourself and know yourself, the authentic self, fulfill your highest purpose, then both of you can walk this journey together. That's Diotima, love and logos. Socrates came along and said you need dreams. That's where it ended. So we're going back to where we left off with Socrates, with dreams. But hang on a second, the dialectic, the whole thing that we've been using to understand the text, to read it without opinions, to read it without interpretation, is to be using self and other all the way through. Wait a minute, is that a pair? Is one greater and one lesser? They're not equals. Holy fuck. We can say, what color? Let's go this color. Therefore, we can take this dialectic of Parmenides to realize this model we've been making isn't just for shits and giggles, or isn't just an intellectual exercise like materialism down here, because you can have a greater being the self and a lesser being other. Therefore, believers or opinion havers are always going to be other than themselves. They are always going to be in conflict and opposition with their own fucking benefit. They would rather be a bitch troll than listen and learn, so long as they're stuck in the belief they got from their childhood upbringing. Human beings work against their own interest. That's the nature of Dramagate. Beefgate, I mean.
I've been a bad little girl.
Why? Because other is the lesser or part that is a pair with self. That's the greater or whole. Which means necessarily for there to be a section of the lesser that's not with the greater, otherwise the two circles would be on top of each other. The part would want to move into the whole and be the whole, which is fine, which is where we're heading. But for there to be a creation or an unfolding, there have to be part and whole. For the self to create reality of any kind, in order to know itself or learn about itself, it has to first create other. For there to be an unfolding, if the self, as Xenophanes says, is one, self or one, the one self, it has to create other or many. So now we can fill in the other term. Many. Necessarily, there has to be a manyness for there to be creation, right? In principle. This isn't, by the way, if our friend is still in chat, maybe he can realize none of what I said is an opinion. These are all things that necessarily have to be in any reality. If there's any reality, any multiverse, any dimension that has an existence, there has to be a root cause that is itself one, but there has to be an unfolding into manyness. Otherwise, there wouldn't be various differences in experience. Differences, hang on a second, that's another logos pair. We can also say the one or the self or the whole is the same. So we can throw another term up here. Same as itself, but in a unique way where you haven't become the same, as we said of the model of justice. There has to be a way of being for humanity where we can all function the same. No hypocrisy. No, the rich get to murder people, but the poor don't. That's not the same. How are we the same? But it also has to account for differences. So it's not women are bad because they're different, or brown people are bad because they're different. Same and different together is the model for justice in humanity. But also, there has to be a creation of difference for there to be an unfolding into physical life, including the evolution into humanity. Difference. Same and different. Different. So notice, not one opinion has been shared. Do you see what I mean, Sushi? Sudi? Opinions are for babies. This is always going to be true. If it's always true, you can nail it down yourself in how you think. And whatever dimension you fall into or evolve out of in this lifetime or the next, you can take what you've been learning, and if you've been practicing it, nurturing it with you. Do you see the difference between opinions and understanding? So what have we been doing? We have been, as none of these principles are physical things, you've never seen a one walking down the street, you've never seen self with your physical senses, you've never seen whole or same waving to you at the shop in the physical world. These are ideas in mind. We have been engaging in this area. Mind. Mind is the mean or the middle, the connecting between self and other, whole and part, same and different. That's why the model of this area has to be the model for understanding, which makes use of these things, can apply it to parts. That's analogy. So everything that I've been saying about politics is nothing other than an analogy. But also, we have been understanding the model. We have been building a model of creation itself that has to be this way, is beautifully so, and will always be this way. In other words, we've been using this model of the whole of all parts here on the board, waiting for it to catch up, drink some coffee, in its activity. Now, let me catch up with your chat. Everything is beliefs, my guy. See, our chatter, everything is beliefs. You can see where you can, having this model or map is necessary because politicians are supposed to, and spiritual people are supposed to help everyone. If you don't, if you're not helping everyone, you are down here, a believer in opposition to the job, to the model. Everyone includes this chatter. Everything is beliefs, my guy. Half a sentence, even knowledge. He told us his problem. We don't have to do any work. Everything is beliefs. So here he is. He's using his words. So he's functioning here. Materialism. There is no knowing. So he's told us everything is belief. This is my model. I'm number 4, which is the cause of all human problems and suffering. And of course he hasn't learned this. So, you know, he has to be very lucky to come across a dialectician and have done some work on personal development himself to be open to listening. Otherwise, better make sure there are no Twitch moderators, because that's another way of making sure the dialecticians don't touch your life. Told us his problem is belief. Definition. Everything is belief. He's given a definition. Even knowledge, he's given a demonstration. What does belief do? Why is there a section of lesser that's not the greater? Why would you want to be the lesser? There has to be some magnetic force stopping you from becoming the greater. Otherwise, there would be no part and whole, lesser and greater and lesser. It would all just be one. There would be no creation, no learning. He demonstrated it. Even knowledge. So here we are, describing, not with opinions, the nature of knowledge itself, describing how all of the great thinkers are in a tradition saying the same thing, describing the full from Homer, Xenophanes, Parmenides, Socrates into Aristotle. So even though we are saying it simply, we're drawing it on the board, we are quoting the greatest experts and the history of mankind's thought itself, it's not going to fucking work. You can't do any better. He has to do the work. It's on him. That's what Parmenides said himself. In fact, we have a quote. Can I bring it up? Do I have it here? Let me see. Yes. I think we can bring up the quote. Give me a sec. All right, here's the quote. One who hears these words have to be puzzled and questions whether the selves do exist, or if they do exist, that they exist in the highest degree, so that it appears abundantly necessary that if selves must be unknown by human nature. Right. You can't know the selves. They can't exist. They do not exist. Or if they do exist, you can't know them. Whoever speaks in this way may appear to be saying something important, may be thought of as being an extraordinary statement, but will remain to be unpersuaded. Okay, that's fair enough. But then he also says, also, here we go. To take that and add it to this. Here we go. The following is the greatest puzzle, my friend in chat. Even if following the proof through many elaborate details from one practiced and experienced and with natural talent in understanding all the dialectic, even then, he who contends that the idea selves are unknowable, they may still remain unpersuaded. That's where our friend is in chat. In other words, he already thinks he knows. He's wrong. He's ignorant. It takes courage to realize you're ignorant and be okay with learning. Even if we outline, oh yeah, you're a believer. Your belief that everything is belief is going to block you in your whole life and is the nature of all human problems. You're not exceptional in that regard. You're here to do the same thing we're all here to do. By the way, you said it. Even knowledge. As Parmenides said, if you deny that knowledge, which is defined as here, the cross-section of whole and part, the cross-section of greater and lesser, the cross-section of one and many, the cross-section of same and different, and in particular, the cross-section of self and other. So not only can you experience it, has Socrates given us many, many dialogues about it, can we define it as we've done? You think you know better. Aren't human beings interesting? That's the nature of human problems. Dum Dum McGee in chat thinks he knows better. Doesn't matter, we're quoting Parmenides, who wrote the greatest book never read, giving us a complete outline of all possible ways of thinking and spiritual experiences capable in any species, including humanity. Thinks he knows better than Parmenides. Socrates spent his life talking about the significance of the brilliant light of being. The Republic is nothing other than the description of that as justice. And the meaning of life, to master the activity of the dialectic, all of the training of the philosopher is to master the art of dialectic, which is understanding, which is three, which is the activity of this model, because it's only through the dialectic that philosophers can help people and also apprehend the model. That's justice. That's what the entire Republic is about. While the Parmenides is called the greatest book never read, the Republic is always recognized as the greatest book in Western literature, or in the top 5 at least by some people. Dum Dum McGee thinks he's smarter than Socrates. Socrates' teacher says that way of thinking, it's the worst. Why? If this is the model, what was so fascinating about where he got his belief from? Our parents. When he was too young to know better, his parents seemed wiser than Socrates, Parmenides, and even Enlightenment itself. What we are seeing is that has to exist. If whole and part, greater and lesser, and all the other duad terms we've been using are necessary building blocks for anything to exist, There needs to be whole and part. If everything was just whole, there would not a whole without parts, there would be no creation. If there was just self with no other, what would self experience? What would self create? If there was a pure one with not manyness, so there has to exist. There has to exist something in parts that is in opposition to the greater to maintain its existence separate. If we could be unified as humanity, there is always going to be some group that says, not us. We're not going to take part in understanding. We are Jews. We are Christians. We are Muslims. We are the better ones. We're going to blow up the world before we join hands with universal principles. Why? Because if this is the paradigm for creation, it has to apply universally. That's what a principle is. That's why it's justice. Universal application of the paradigm is what it means to be a paradigm. Meaning, the paradigm has to also apply to cognitive functions. If this creation is just so, self can develop intelligence, this realm, by evolving through time. So we can even put out of time here and in time here. So the evolution or the creation of the physical world, so that we can, through time, recognize this very model by moving through it ourselves. The universal paradigm needs to apply also to states of consciousness. In fact, the model is consciousness itself, meaning as necessarily logically there has to be part in opposition to the whole for the lesser not to unify with the greater at some stage or level of reality. Not all of reality, just at the level of appearances and problems. So too must it apply to cognitive stages. So our friend in chat is perfectly demonstrating the nature of human problems, but also we're seeing why he has to exist. If he wasn't saying, fuck you Parmenides, fuck you Socrates, fuck you logic, fuck you reason, fuck you principles, fuck you causes, my mummy and daddy was smarter than all of that because I just knew in my heart when I was 4. If he didn't function that way, we wouldn't have a stage of human development in opposition to all of those good things. Oneness, unity, goodness, benefit, truth. They're all good for him. The paradigm, reason, Parmenides, Socrates, benefiting. They're all good, one, true in principle. In fact, the oneness, goodness, and truth is the 3 highest words to describe the nature of the paradigm itself. Beauty, justice, excellence, all of these things are a kind of oneness or unity. A goodness which benefits, we're benefited by being beautiful, creating beautiful things, just worlds, being in excellence, and it's true. That's the nature of human problems. Cognitive function of 5, use of logos or reasoning to reject what's good, true, and one, based on a unsuspected fake model caused by the cognitive function of belief, how mummy and daddy looked when you were 4 years old and they took away your Christmas present and said, don't you trust anyone. Wow, they passed on the Dharma. No, they didn't. They passed on the ignorance that they suffered from their parents on and on back to the caveman days. Both function in opposition to the whole, which is why it's always conflict. It's a kind of addiction because your image, I am a Muslim, I am a Christian, I am a Anderson, I am a Smith, is tied to this family clan. My role within the family clan, be a good foot soldier and say that there is no knowing, it's all belief, and my belief is the right belief. To be a good functioner within the model, the family model, necessarily here. Using this model, we can understand the nature of the paradigm of justice. It's the whole of all parts. It's the one that incorporates a oneness that incorporates all many. Accounts for a sameness of humanity, but also allows for there to be a difference in our evolution. Well, a difference in our evolving necessary for evolution. Bringing us to the meaning of life, to master the art of dialectic, which can only happen through time because there's a crossover here, allowing us to solve, to understand. So what are we doing? We're understanding all human problems, but also we can reflect on the model we're using, which is this, as a kind of meditation to open our own mind to the model. Again, as Parmenides said, as we just quoted, if you are carrying a false belief like our friend in chat has, even though we do that, we will still remain unpersuaded. Or as the Oracle says,
the problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they
Didn't reason themselves into.
we can't reason himself out of a position he didn't reason himself into. He will remain unpersuaded. Which is the greatest danger of the soul, says Parmenides, the teacher of Socrates. The guy who gave us the dialectic. Interesting. So, this is what we're here to master. Requires the use of the model. There are people who are naturally apt at it, like Emma, that have to be pointed to this. Hey, by the way, you might not be aware of Homer, Parmenides, and Socrates, or Homer, Xenophanes, Parmenides, and Diotima and Socrates. But those were the 5 big thinkers before everything went downhill. But we've been doing it because we love this book and it's awesome and it's a lot of fun.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder?
But we can share it with you, so long as you get rid of those Twitch moderators who suck ass. And of course, drama Beefgate 2025, which is breaking the internet by storm these days. In other words, you're 7 foot tall. Let me show you how to do a dribble. I don't know. How to do a crossover dribble. Let me show you how to do a 360 tomahawk dunk. In other words, let's review this model together to understand how to perfect your excellence. But hang on a second. If this is the model of excellence, that's the truth and goodness and oneness, we can see that even these primary terms, oneness, implies one and many. Goodness implies a whole, so that's why goodness and wholesome, it's a wholesome piece of bread. It's not, I don't know, breaking into its whole and parts. So goodness or benefit brings you into a whole of all parts. The truth of beauty and justice speaks to an analogy. What you've said here is the truth. I said the car is outside, and I looked to see the car is outside, and the lesser words reflect the greater. So we say it's truth. And even that statement can be seen as a kind of a whole that we call truth. The whole statement, the whole thing is true because the lesser reflected the greater. So as a whole, we say the whole thing is true, or is the truth. What you said was the truth. because as a whole, we recognize these three parts. Well, these two parts within a greater whole. So there's a new kind of triad, lesser, greater, and whole. But we're already using the word whole as a duad, so we need another word that means this section here. So all of the defining of this section here, we've been building a definition of not the truth, but as oneness implies one, goodness implies good, truth implies true. The true self, the one self, the good self. What kind of a one is the true self? Oh, it's a whole. You mean a whole of all parts, like the model of justice? No. It's even the model of that. It's a whole that is whole without even having parts. It's a whole that is never touched by parts because parts finish here with this circle. So there's a section that's not touched by parts, but it's still parts, but it's still whole. There is, therefore, whole is also same. There's a section that's the same as itself that will never be touched by different. We can wake up different and create a just world or create a justice of our mind by becoming the same, accounting for our differences. But there's a kind of same that's not touched by difference. And by the way, this isn't just a logical exercise, because the dialectic, which is the highest use of reason, because literally you apply the dialectic to, I wish I could do the quotes. I'll read out the quote. So as Parmenides gave us the dialectics, he says, look, you have to permit these ideas of real beings to exist. You have to keep your mind fixed on them, and also keep your mind fixed on any objections, like our friend saying you can't do that, and ignore the rejections. Define each particular idea. That's where you turn your dianoia, understanding. That will allow each one of the real beings, and also you have to allow them to always be of the self. That's the power of dialectics. So, in our defining of these ideas here, we recognize they're of the self because of this crossover. But that's the dialectic. Each one of these terms we've been using in this model are selfers. Whole, part, same, different, beauty, excellence, justice, lesser, greater, whole, equal, pure. Let's say pure. No, whole, pure. Whole, pure. Like a pure whole without no parts. Without no parts. That's a tricky one. We're still trying to find that word. The third term in lesser, greater, whole. Each one of them is the preparation for this activity. In other words, as we've been reading beauty and doing a dialectic on beauty for the last 2 years. We come across some information on beauty, write it down in your book. When you've got enough terms, do a dialectic. What is beauty itself in relation to itself? How does beauty affect some other? Pick your, how does beauty affect you? How does beauty affect justice? How does beauty relate to mind? Any other that you've been using that's relevant to beauty. How does beauty reflect the logos or relate to the logos? Demonstration. Hey, by the way, let's say your soul. How does beauty affect your soul? Having been affected as the other, self to other, how do you, having been affected, affect your partner, other to another other, division? And then as a result of that, how do you both come together and relate back to beauty in a new way? It unfolds perfectly through self and other and ends up greater back at the beginning, but greater than when you started. That's the hero's journey. Luke Skywalker goes home, but now he's a Jedi. Harry Potter goes back to his step-parents, but now he's a wizard. Katniss goes back to Section 8 or whatever, but now she's won the Hunger Games, she's really full in her tummy. And she does archery. It's the hero's journey. It's the model of all... Well, it's the archetype, isn't it? It's the paradigm. All games, movies, superheroes, animes. It's the dialectic. And by the way, because you have a new insight into beauty, you can do it again. You can do it again and again and again. And the more you read, the more clues you have. You can upgrade it over and over again. Every night you dream, that will help you with this. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
So in other words, this as the paradigm for understanding has to have universal application or scope over all of the other self-er ideas or self-ers. Apply it to beauty. How you have to do it for justice. Excellence, whole, part, same, other, lesser, greater. So we have now a list of self-er terms with these necessarily as the highest and most significant because they have scope over all others. Which allows us to make sense of what Xenophanes told us. There is a kind of whole that's one, but also it's the self that's looking and hearing and seeing right now. We need to understand what kind of a one is this whole. And now we can, because self and other is a lesser and greater duad. Meaning, we have been reaching this point. We've understood human problems. We had our friend providentially come into the chat and share his problem in one sentence. We literally just read his first sentence. That was enough. Yeah, okay, you've told us your problem. We turn to the oracle, and the oracle says,
The problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
and we have to listen to the oracle because of how much reverb there is, and that means that she's saying something very wise.
The problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
So much reverb, so much wisdom. But yeah, we didn't even have to read on. Not gonna work. In fact, the more he fights against reason, truth, understanding, goodness, and benefit, the more entrenched in his little image of himself that he has. Sadism. Trolling is sadism. I'm harming myself, having a negative impact on the world, but I like it because I feel like I'm the big bully in charge, like my parents who shat on me when I was a kid. Yes. Like Trump was tortured, he tortured others. Like his dad was a racist, he's a racist. It's always the same. So we had to listen to the oracle. We don't even have to go further than one sentence. We've understood human problems here. We've understood the model of excellence. We can call it the logos. Or the model of the logos. There is an ousia, a knowing of it. That's the enlightenment experience. The divine light of your being. There is an activity based on that. That's understanding. That's what makes Emma and others like her so exceptional. They're 7 foot tall. The next step is to master the art. Develop a jump shot as well. I think Emma likes football. So, you know, you're already 300 pounds and 7 foot tall, and you've got an arm, a cannon for an arm. The next thing is to learn the plays, so you can be the best quarterback that's ever been. But hang on a second. We want to know what Xenophanes told us we have to know. Well, the axiom, know thyself. We want to know the self. Not the self of the whole of all parts, but the self itself. This one. Self in relation to itself. Not in relation to others. not how it functions. The highest, you could say that the creation of pure being or mind knowing itself as pure beauty, excellence, justice, etc., is the highest functioning of the self because it's self to others. So we've had a clue this whole time. We've been applying the dialectic to our reading and all of the books we've been reading on this channel for the last couple of years. We've always been saying, look, to play the video game, you got to look for the keys and you have to know how to put them in the door to unlock the door to the next part of the mansion of Resident Evil or Silent Hill or whatever. This is how to do it. The reason we read someone who's writing from the stage of self, Pierre Grimes or Socrates or Xenophanes or Parmenides or Diotima, people who've reached the self, is because they give us the clues. The way we put the clues into the slot is the dialectic. We've been using it all the way along. In fact, the first series on this channel has been to read the introduction to the Parmenides, where a 19-year-old Socrates and a 16-year-old Parmenides meet, and he says, here, I'm going to give you some paragraphs, put it together, pull out the pieces to create the dialectic, because if you don't master the dialectic, you'll never find truth. That's the disaster. That's a life not worth living. So this was the beginning, the first and final course, kind of the beginning of our series, the podcast series. But now it's coming in clutch, because what we're seeing is our goal has been here the whole time. Self in relation to self, one in relation to one not with many, one not in relation to many. That would be how it functions. The ideal functioning would be here. The cause of human problems, or our shit functioning, is down here. So now we have not just one way to understand all human problems, we have many ways. What's the cause of human problems? Many, that isn't one. Or many in opposition to one. Oh, it's to be different in opposition to same. To have the limits of your belief in opposition to people who don't and are free. To be a part in opposition to the whole. Now we're not saying part that's not whole. You have to be in opposition. You have to fight against what's whole or good or one or true. Otherwise, there would be no space for it as a stage of development. We would start already in our goal. There has to be a unfolding into ignorance, which is also why punishment's never any fucking good. All you teach people with punishment is to avoid getting caught. Avoid examining your model, where the first cause of your problem, and avoid reflection on the activity that was the manifestation of the model, both of which caused the issue. A just society is to always help people learn, not to torture them because they didn't fit into the fucking system, or because they're a human being who gets their parents' beliefs and then spends their life acting on it. That's just what it means to be alive. Also, we need to do this thing so we can address the societal conditions. Yes, if you are forced because your parents somehow are magically knowing of everything just because they have a kid, you get fucking stuck in a torture house your whole fucking life, tortured by their unsuspected false beliefs while they pretend to be a knower while being in opposition to knowing. That's the nature of human upbringing. Pretty fucked, right? Maybe we should do something about it. Equally so, the majority of crimes have as a root cause poverty, which is caused by wealth inequality, which is a fundamentally systemic and definitional to capitalism. We could, not need prisons if we addressed capitalism, wealth inequality, poverty. 90% of crimes gone. That's what it means to be mature. To move from savage, barbaric cavemen, which we are because we're here, to true humans or from savage to sage. We can also use all these same words to define enlightenment. What's enlightenment? Oh, it's a whole of all parts, because it's this crossover between greater and lesser. It's the same and different. It's unlimited and limit. But we want to know the self. What are you? Prior to your many incarnations, prior to your ignorance, prior to your problems, prior to your mummy and daddy and your own loyalty to your religion and politician, prior to all that, and most immediate to your experience, what are you? The great taboo in ignorant, savage cultures, materialist cultures, Aristotelian cultures, religious cultures, Justinian's cultures, the Roman cultures, not the Greek. The taboo, wondering about yourself, the self. Well, as Xenophanes says, it's one, it's the whole, but he didn't say what kind of a one or whole. Parmenides came along and said, you know how my teacher Xenophanes says the self or God, self is God, it's what's watching, God is what's watching right now, or the self. By the way, it's one, and it's also the whole. You won't know what kind of one or whole God or self is unless you do this, the dialectic. The dialectic that we've been using the whole time to get all of these words we've been playing with has been by doing this. And here we see that it is the greatest terms because it has scope over all the other terms, and in particular, the greatest self and other or functioning, the greatest functioning therefore of the self in principle is to take the highest words, self and other, and apply it to self and other. Get Night Shyamalan along on the phone, because this is the greatest twist of all time. The greatest use of the dialectic has been the terms of the dialectic itself, which is actually interesting because the activity of the dialectic that we are here to do has 4 applications. Apply the dialectic to truth, as we're doing here. Midwifery, as the oracle says.
The problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
The oracle's drunk, but also wise, and you can tell because of the reverb. So you can't reason yourself out of your problem, so you have to do a dialectic called philosophical midwifery. What we are in the text is also dreams is necessary. And of course, we can only realize this ourselves because someone has done that last step, named Pierre Grimes. Mythology. He wrote a book about it. One, two, three, four. The definition of the dialectic we get from philosophy. The highest functioning of it is to remove your problems in midwifery. The division, or how you can apply it to a manyness, both of these two things, even though it's two, it's still a manyness. Dream analysis, and then to share it to others, or to, in conclusion, you can relate back to the self through your mastery by sharing it, or mythology. So a dialectic on the dialectic is the functioning we're here to do, which is interesting because to answer that final question, or the ultimate question, it's a dialectic on the terms of the dialectic. So in other words, the highest definition is the self only in relation to itself, which is literally, as we've seen, self and other fit part and whole. Here, our understanding of this section, not enlightenment and justice, not human problems and ignorance and suffering, but the cause of all of that, the self, in relation to self. Its highest functioning is to create mind. Self in relation to others. when you're divided or other from self and there is no self, it's just others to others. Beliefs. I'm an other relating to the other, my parents or my preacher or my minister or whatever. So here we have in the model of ontology or reality, in the three kinds of models that exist, the three dimensions of reality, and as the models are knowable, the three kinds of knowing, the fake in belief, the truth in nous or knowledge, and a kind of knowing that's transcendent even of knowing. We have the three categories of the dialectic. Hang on a second, there are four. Wait a minute, didn't the book say that we have to give birth to certain questions? 1. How does that which transcends qualities cause the greatest of all qualities here? How does the greatest of all qualities cause the manyness or parts or division? We seem close to answering that with this model, with this picture. Hooray! The kids have too much alcohol in their juice. They seem drunk. But there was one more question that the book said. Let's see it. One more question. Qualities. Yeah. So we're at dreams in the text, but before we move on to dreams, Socrates says, "Hey, this is the last thing we read yesterday, I think." Okay, so Jesus asked the question, "Who has reached the level of Socrates since Socrates? Has anyone? If not," and the answer is no. Well, Pierre Grimes, of course, what we're reading. What do we need to do? Good question, says Socrates. Let's bring him in. It's not a simple task, but truth will be our guide. Since the work that is the cornerstone of these followers is Parmenides, the dialectic we've been using, I'll follow their lead. Now, the last philosopher was Damascus, before the Christian Emperor Justinian, otherwise known as Fuckface McGee, closed down the schools of the philosophy at 529 AD, bringing in the Dark Ages, where everything went to shit. I have already mentioned that Plato stated it was through dreams that I received insights into the divine and oracles in dreams. Speaking of the oracle today, I was commanded by God to follow my practice. Importantly, he said it was through dreams we can recover what one does not know about one's past, present, and future. To solve the problem the oracle says we have.
The problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
How do we overcome that problem? By looking at our dreams to get what we need from our past, because we didn't reason ourselves into the position, so we can solve the problem. The great problem that our friend in chat demonstrated and Parmenides warned us about, to be tied to belief in opposition to understanding and knowledge. However, he talked about dreams, but he did not, nor did those who follow him, stress the philosophical significance that the role of dreams plays in human destiny. His understanding adds much to the riddles of philosophy. To the riddles philosophy seeks to understand and experience. Now, here are the primary ideas: the one or the good. In our model, here. This model, this Usia, the one or the good. What we have seen is also the true. So we've got 3. Because we've recognized there are 3 aspects of the soul, the desires, truth seeking outwardly, good seeking inwardly, and reasoning, but also 3 categories of self terms that we've been trying to nail down with our understanding or the dialectic. Protocol. Next, the idea of the good or the brilliant light of being. So that means this model here, this kind of knowingness that's called knowledge, is the brilliant light of being, but also is the idea of the good. And as we could also say it's the idea also means to behold. So it's the experience or beholding of the good, or the one, or the truth, or the self. Self beholding itself. Next, the soul or the nature of soul, which means here we are as we souls, waking up, getting our beliefs from our dumbass parents. Sorry, not your parents. Your parents were the wise ones. But everyone else is pretty dumb, right? You'd have to agree with that, because they're all different from yours. And if yours are wise, then everyone else's are wrong. Necessarily. So, other than yours, everyone else's parents pretended to be knowing or demonstrated the false model. That's where we are as a soul here. And the nature of soul is here. Or if there is a part of soul that unifies, we could even say the soul reaches this way. It's either that or that. It's either here or there. Maybe this is the individual soul, and then this is the nature of soul, the whole of it. Now, the problem is if the one is beyond all qualities or categories, or beyond all differences or parts or limits, we can use a lot of words now that we have this model on the board. If the one is beyond all categories or qualities, how the fuck can it be the source of that which can only be described as the superlatives of both? How? Easy. It's a Venn diagram. How can this, which has no parts or qualities, be the cause of the greatest, or this model here, the greatest whole of all of the parts? Or if this is the parts, the top or the hyparxis is also in the whole. Therefore, our question is, how can, using the dialectic, how can the self itself be the cause of self connected with other? So I don't know if it's a sufficient answer, but it's an answer. How does that which is beyond all qualities cause the ultimate qualities? Because the dialectic shows that self to self is the whole, or qualityless, and the next stage, self to others, or the highest expression of the logos or the dialectic being the structure or activity of the logos. The highest expression of the logos is self in relation to others in the most fundamental, purest sense. And it was there the whole time, sneakily hiding in the dialectic that we've been using the whole time. What do you say, RM? What do you say?
Okay, go ahead. I'm a real living being.
Okay, nobody said that you went.
Hey,
Well,
all checks out.
okay. Seems pretty sus. Makes me think.
Pour much?
So, if the one is beyond all qualities, how can it be the source of the superlatives? And how can the union of all these categories? So now having gone through, this is the thing, we've read this a couple of times, but having done it, demonstrated it, making it our own, like we've been telling our friend in chat to do, not just listen for opinions like a baby. Now that we go back to reading it, we see union, the union of all of these superlatives. Union or oneness, union of all parts, baby. Union of the parts, showing that we're on the ball. Equally, how can the union of those qualities be the source of what is fragmented into an innumerable manyness? Innumerable. See what he's doing? This is the thing. This is the thing about the hang on. This is the thing about the dialectic. We're also looking to match the mind of the author. Just as we've been saying of the dream maker, if the dream maker functions as the excellence of self, using the model of the whole, and knows all the parts to function providentially to us through our dreams, so too is our author. This is why we're reading this book. This is why it bangs so much. But the thing is, unless you look, you won't see it. In other words, now that we've done the work or played the game, as we go back, we will recognize key words he's been using all along. Now, when we read it, it just feels profound. And it makes sense. Seemingly obviously, but also mysteriously. But with the understanding, we can see how and why it's so profound. Because look at how he said it. How can the union of all these categories? The word union hides the word oneness. In other words, he has this model that we're discovering already. And how can it be fragmented into not just a manyness, an innumerable manyness? No whole, can't be numbered, can't be brought into a sameness or wholeness. By using that adjective before manyness, he's sliding in, without saying it directly, but in his thinking, he's sliding in what we will have come to in reading it. Anyone will have come to if they reach this kind of reflection. Not just a manyness, which is what we have here, manyness, one of the lessers, many and one, but you can't number it. What's it called when you number it? You put a name or a one on it. Innumerable manyness is another way of saying a part that is not touching one. It's this section of the Venn diagram. See how he's saying it, but he's not saying it outright? We had to have done the work. We had to have realized whole and part is fundamental. We would have had to have made this lineage from Homer through Xenophanes to Parmenides to Socrates. So the big dogs. You know, Homer says it can be done, but it's these two guys that give us the clues, Xenophanes and Parmenides. We had to have listened and carried it as a question, not like our guy in chat who just says, I don't want questions, I want your opinion. No, we need questions. And we had to do the work ourselves. I don't want to do any work. I want you to tell me like a baby. No, you got to do the work. You got to be puzzled. Because only then we could have looked for these things and realized whole and part, the whole of God that's seeing. Recognize all the other pairs that we've got, same and different. Xenophanes, the one and many. Taken Xenophanes 1, found the duad. And also brought in the key word of self from the dialectic from Parmenides. A innumerable or not one manyness. There's a couple of steps removed from whole and part, but we can do it. An innumerable manyness is a unwholed part, or an a unwoned manyness. See how he does it? But this can also be a model for us. Just as Parmenides says and the oracle says, you can't reason themselves out of their false beliefs, but also it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to see it for yourself. So when you master this, or as you master this, can you make games or tell stories or create streams or podcasts or create video games or do songs or poems that say it, but instead of saying a non-one many, say an innumerable many. Go one step away from non-one. Say innumerable. Give someone some work to do. Now, on one sense, I'm not doing that here, but another sense, then, if you are following along with this stream, that doesn't talk about celebrities, only mentions politicians as an analogy to talk about this, doesn't do drama. Well, there is Beefgate 2025, but other than that, no drama. It's not really regular. It's entertaining, it's fun as fuck, but it's different. Then I think it's okay to, solve puzzles together. But if we were to make a song or whatever, or create a piece of art or a video game, we wouldn't say it as explicitly as we're saying it here. We'd say it like the author is saying it, or our dreams say it to us. The excellence of self. One step removed, like a metaphor or an analogy, one step removed. An innumerable manyness. So those are two questions. How does the one create the oneness, and how does the oneness create the many? Now add to that idea that there has to be a return from the manyness to the one. So in the next sentence, how can there be an innumerable manyness? So he gave that, hey, by the way, innumerable manyness, manyness to the one. He showed that the innumerable means one. Numerable means oneing. And if you're familiar with Plato's Republic, he calls the one, or the study of the one, he calls it arithmetic, number, because number is a measure of one. The philosophical quest for each soul is to make the journey to the source of all sources, the effort to render some rational account of these problems is the goal of philosophy. That's what we're doing. We're making it, in this model, we're making it rational. And what are the three problems? How can this, which we are now using the dialectic to call self itself, cause this, which we can now with this Venn diagram see it's the self and other, or the second part of the dialectic, self in relation to other. And how can this cause that which has no self and is just others relating to others? Jews bumping up against Palestinians, Christians bumping up against Muslims, the left bumping up against the right, the billionaires bumping up against the poors. Always, always, always conflict, division, necessarily in principle. So these three terms are needed to give birth to these three, or to make a rational account of these two questions. How does one cause the other? But then he said you need a third question if you are going to reach your destiny or your highest purpose or goal. How do we return? Another way of saying that is, if we are down here as these innumerable parts or others without self, how do we, as that other, relate back to and reach the self itself? Synthesis and analysis. We have to somehow synthesize, bring into a oneness everything we've seen about these puzzles and relate it back to not just a whole that's not parts, or a same that transcends difference, or a one that transcends many. Relate it back to the self, back to the one, or self, or the one self. So we've literally been doing what Socrates has told us in the text to do. How do we relate back? Why? Why is it? Because the effort to render some rational account of these problems, as we've just done, is one of the goals of philosophy. It is not just for cleaning up metaphysical problems. This kind of reflection is the meditation that leads to the spiritual vision. In other words, it's the, as we have it in the text, it's the activity. Each has a we should probably put the put it over here because it's getting a bit messy on the board. Each has a model or ousia or knowingness, and each has an activity or a use of logos or language, as our friend used his language to reject anything good or whole. And if he was an open, curious fellow, he could be led to reflect on the underlying model that made him so certain, in spite of the fact he's obviously wrong. He's disagreeing with Socrates and Parmenides and reason itself. But he is still using logos. He is still talking in a kind of way. Debate. Debate is about opinions. That's why debate is always bad. It's always going to be in opposition to the whole. In principle, debate is winning and losing. In other words, you still end up different. You don't become same. Why do we still have Nazis? Because all the fucking philosophers and reporters and journalists do debate and not dialectic, keeping us different and not coming to a same or a conclusion. No conclusions, no solutions, or
no one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
No one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems. So we've got a model and an activity or a use of language or logos. Debate is the distortion, dialectic is the excellence, and then there is this question here. So every circle has both. And what we've seen is the activity can be to perfect itself, or not really, can be on its creation, so we can use understanding in the dialect in midwifery to solve problems of beliefs, or to address the issue that the Oracle keeps telling us about.
The problem is that you
Can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
So that's how we get out of our problems. We didn't reason, we imitated a model, which is called belief, which is the cognitive function of 4. Different down here. But as the text says, remember in the text, that's why it's important to read a logos-based text. This is why it's important to read a manual written by a master mechanic if you want to learn how to fix an engine. Therefore, who are the people who reached the self? Xenophanes, got a bit from him. Parmenides, get the dialectic from him. Socrates, now that we have the Balboa translation, we can read some of his dialogues written by Plato, not all of course, but with Pierre Grimes in the list, now we can do the whole thing. And you can keep adding to that tradition. Your lucky number 13. Whee! It's not just a cleaning up of problems like rationally, it's also a kind of reflection that's the meditation because it leads to the doorway of the spiritual vision. So, meditation means an activity that allows you to revert back on the model. So, we have the activity that's harmful, materialism. We have the model it's based on, belief. We see why it's necessarily a problem. It's in opposition to goodness, truth, benefit, and ultimately also the good, the true, the one. The self. It's always in conflict, causing the pages of human history ruled by believers, not fucking philosophers. We kill those guys, usually, because of the savage nature of our current level of evolution, 4 and 5. Causes the pages of human history to be soaked in blood. And by the way, are we smart enough to solve problems? Fuck yes. Are we doing it? No. Why? This. So we have the modern left, 5, and the modern right, 4. People say we need a third political party. Yes, but also it's just one. The one party. And I guess we have to do our best to share this as best we can and be patient until enough people realize and we can do it and move out of those stages of evolution. We have the model, we have an understanding of what the model is, but we're missing the activity here. What, therefore, is the activity here that will allow us to purify or improve even the wise people? Like we can be even Master Jiraiya's teacher. Hey, Master Jiraiya, you got a pervy problem. Hey, Tsunade, I'm referring to Naruto. You've got a gambling problem. Hey, Master Roshi, you've got a drinking problem. Yes, even gurus who have a level of wisdom still have problems. And by the way, there are 2 kinds of wisdom. There's this Usia of the model, and there's this Usia model, which is even higher. The one, the self, the whole, transcending parts. So that would be our functioning for others, but we want to get that model ourselves because we need to know the self. So there is a use of that activity to reflect on that model, which would be the highest use of human or any kind of activity. The highest activity and logos, therefore, is what we're doing now, wondering about and nailing down this so we can find out the model that it's based on. Therefore, as debate is its distortion, dialectic is its excellence, the highest use of excellence would therefore be a kind of dialectic. So the highest excellence, or what we see in the text are called, let's see it in the text, in the book. Excellence. Go back. There's a kind of excellence of mind itself. Openness, freedom, to act without thinking, a state of freedom that makes possible acts that are totally appropriate to one's circumstance. Normal education is by rote and does not achieve that state of mind. It's a loss if that's all that's offered. It is the union of the body and soul into what is a complete being that makes the human being. It is no different from the informing principle that brings to a unity the different parts and organizations of the body into a single being. The turning about to discover what learning is furthermost reach that raises that union to a spiritual union that marks the pursuit of philosophy. So there is a principle, an informing principle even to the unifying nature of, I'm reading this. An informing principle that brings even that union of knowingness. Here is the pseudo excellence, that's the part without whole. The appearance of excellence. Pure justice shows itself when the soul reverts upon itself to surface and eliminate the blocks. This one.
The problem is that you can't
Reason someone out of a position
that they didn't reason themselves into.
And of course, we survive death and are reincarnated. We carry along with what is learned and nurtured. So justice plays out its hand and makes sure that each soul receives its proper due. Look at the extreme suffering many souls experience in each of the days on earth, and you'll see the past playing out its justice on earth. So we better do it. Have courage, stay in the game, help your friends, and your loved ones. Okay, let's try true excellence. Here we go. So there is a experience that is superlatives balanced by negatives. It's a bit of a clue for what we're after. The experience of beauty unfolds the nature of reality as truth. So we can put excellence, beauty, justice, and throw reality in that mix of monads. Just as, therefore, our problems or our beliefs is a pseudo-reality, a false belief about self and reality. It is from the state that true excellence can emerge. That's what we get from Diotima as well. Diotima notes that there is something still to be done. So the experience of truth or beauty. So let's read this part. Socrates says, "My teacher was said to be Diotima from Mantinea. Plato in his Symposium, only read the Balboa translation, let me warn you, has me recalling the steps leading to a vision of the perfection of beauty, to truth itself. Truly it is a work of art. He brings the role of personification, myth, and mean analogies. Oh, mean analogies. Not only the Dharma, but is this a mean analogy? Is beauty, the experience of beauty as truth, th, a mean analogy between parts, the whole of all parts, and the whole that transcends parts? By the way, do we see the importance of telling it as a story, giving puzzles, or myth? He brings the role of personification, myth, mean analogies, the models of love, and even includes a spiritual practice to reach that vision. Are we doing it? He was bold enough to say that, so Plato talking about Diotima's teachings with Socrates. He was bold enough to say that here is a philosophy that can rival Homer and Hesiod. He adds, so giving birth not to children from this loving relationship, but works that will last 1,000 years and rival Homer and Hesiod. Rival all other works. Imagine giving birth as a result of the perfection of your love and Logos relationship. Imagine, therefore, reaching a freedom from all problems, as we just read, to act perfectly in each situation, the ideal of the samurai. To escape the problems of your current life and the prison of reincarnation, but also to give works to not babies, but works. Imagine. He adds that the experience of truth or beauty is not final. It is penultimate.
Wow. Wow. No, get. Go ahead. Wow.
Imagine people changing their positions and improving for the better.
Penultimate. What does that mean? That means confirmation of our model, baby. Means we got a fancy word to impress your friends at the coffee shop. When you say, hey, by the way, you know how you're interested in the excellence of your soul? Oh, and you also care about others, so you want, to solve political problems and create a healthy life, just life. Well, here's the model. By the way, you've been using it. That's what's made you so amazing and beautiful and wonderful. You've been naturally using it without a clear understanding of what it is you've been using. It's called understanding. It's the dialectic. Because you've been naturally interested in causes and preconditions and principles, which exist here as whole and parts together, because principles apply to the whole of all parts, as opposed to the jabronis in government who only say a part for you and a part for me. Yeah, you're pretty amazing. That's why we're having coffee. But by the way, once we reach this, and if we go and if you be my baby, or don't say that, if we have a relationship based on love and Logos, according to Diotima and Socrates, when we reach this model and experience it as the perfection of beauty and bliss, yes, it's the model of justice, but it's not the only model. And then lean back, so you have to raise your voice so everyone in the coffee shop can hear you say, it's actually the penultimate model. Penultimate model. Second last is what penultimate means. It's a fancy word that makes you sound fancy and smart. And then everyone in the coffee shop will say, and then you say, yeah, penultimate. It means second last. And then everyone in the coffee shop will say, and then everyone in the coffee shop will say, and then you can do a bow. Because they know that you're so smart because you use the word penultimate. See? This is called having Riz. See? I'm teaching you how to do aura farming.
Wow.
You're doing aura farming at the coffee shop.
You'll get a bunch of views.
And you'll get a bunch of views.
Brain rot escalates.
Hey.
I'm a real living being.
Well, I don't know about that. So, as we say, as we've been seeing in this model, there is the fake model, pseudo model, and all of the other monad terms. Pseudo justice. Racists thinks that they're justified. MAGA thinks they're justified in doing their racist shit. Pseudo beauty. right? Those crazy mega weirdos marry other crazy mega weirdos, and all the women look the same. Like, we won't get into that. We won't get into mega makeup. But also we have excellence. They think they're being top shit. But also that new monad word that we just read, reality. It's a false reality. They live in a false world, which is another aspect to help us understand problems. Hey, do people in their problems relate to a world that doesn't exist? Do they, when you say, hey, I really like waffles, do they say, you hate pancakes? And you ask, what kind of reality are you in where I said that? That's a whole different sentence, you weirdo. Are they projecting a pseudo reality, a false reality? By the way, is that cry bullying? These fascists say do all this terrible stuff in the real world, or the everyday world, but in their reality they're projecting a world where they're the victims. Let us do our racism. Aren't you supposed to be the tolerant left? We're a small bean. Small bean defense. Don't call us Nazis. That's mean. Let us murder and rape the brown people and then enslave them and take them away from their family. But don't call us racists. I'm the one being victimized. Me, the trillionaire. So I'm gonna teach you, if you want me to be a Nazi, I'll show you by being a Nazi. That meme? I think I've showed it before. If you want me to be a Nazi, then I will meme. Oh, first one up. Here it is. Let's bring it up. Here we go. The lady saying, "Oh God, these Trump people are racists." And the MAGA guy goes, "That attitude is what's pushing me to be racist." And she says, "Oh, I'll do the voices."
My God, these Trump people are racist.
That attitude is what's pushing me to be a racist.
Say what?
Well, I might as well. You say I'm a Nazi, so fine, I'll be a Nazi if it makes you happy.
It doesn't.
Well, I bought this Waffen-SS uniform for Halloween. You'll cry offensive, maybe. So maybe I'll just wear it every day.
Say what?
And then he's shaving his head and getting a Nazi tattoo.
I just hate to do this. I feel bullied, really.
Funny meme. Funny meme. Why? How can we understand that? This is the significance of understanding. Once you see the model, you can have freedom and fun to pick the appropriate terms. Are we for time? Shit, I gotta check my phone. Let me just pause for a second. I'll be right back. I'm back. I had to talk to a man about a boat. No, a boat man about a fan. He's buying the fan that's too powerful for my music. My fans are too powerful. Not that kind of fan. And not an only fan.
Talking about a bunch of slop. I don't know if you know this, but like weird dudes exist everywhere.
Sorry, weird dude joke there. I take it back.
You've been a bad little girl and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now.
I deserve that.
All right, enough.
Enough.
I think it's awesome.
Okay. Well, someone likes my humor. It wasn't as barely humor. Anyway, what are we saying? Oh, by having an apprehension of the model, we can function automatically, maybe authentically, freely, in a fun way, most appropriate to the situation. Or do we read this in the book? Giving birth to a true excellence become, okay. Oh, we read it a minute ago, we don't have to do it again. Most appropriately to the situation, or have fun. Fun! Like we talked about Emma and those of her ilk being 7 foot tall and being naturally good at basketball, but if they recognize that there's a model and they can apprehend it and they can make it their own, they can automatically use it in any way that they want, in any conversation. They can talk to anybody. They can talk to anybody, anywhere in the world, and have fun. That's a dialectician. And that's why Beefgate 2025 happened. And as an example, we said, hey, you know how those Nazis and stuff project a reality that's not there? They waffle pancake us. In other words, they create a, like every right winger ever for always, they create a situation. The immigrants are eating our cats and dogs. And then they use their projected reality as an excuse to act, function according to their model. And the tragic irony is, or comedic irony if we can escape it, is that the very thing they do in response to their projection is the injustice they are projecting. You're calling me a Nazi? Well, I guess I'll do Nazi things. No, you're projecting it. And the thing you're projecting, you're doing. Or cry bullying. You are the bully and you're crying you've been bullied and you feel like you're the victim because you're only responding to being bullied, but you're responding in that very bullying thing. Every accusation is a confession of the right wing. Because reality is one of the monads. And if it's a monad, it has 3 kinds of existences. It has its truth, as we see, that we can reach as the truth of beauty, as Diotima is saying. It has its fake, its pseudo model, pseudo beauty, all the monads, pseudo excellence, pseudo truth, pseudo reality, projection, cry bullying. But it also has, and remember how everyone clapped for you at the coffee shop when you said, hey, listen, baby, that model, the truth of excellence and beauty that we reached because we have a logos and loving relationship, the ideal relationship that we got from Diotima. It's the penultimate model, and everyone in the coffee shop went. One person clapped, and then more people clapped, and then everyone clapped. Like in the movies. Like in the movies, baby. Penultimate. In other words, it's the second last model, or ousia, or knowingness. The second last, spiritual excellence, or spiritual just means psychic, or out of the body. The model doesn't have a physical existence, it's the cause of physical existence. So, penultimate means second last. Ultimate is here. This model of the self, of one that's not many, of self that's not other, or transcendent is another word. So another word you could say is, because it's the cause of the qualities, it unfolds into a manyness, it creates, it casts. You could see, look, Imagine this circle is you, and this yellow circle is your shadow. It's causal, but it's also transcendent. If all of a sudden it starts raining outside and gets cloudy and your shadow goes away, it's not going to affect you. Your state of mind isn't affected by the, wouldn't you like to be in a state of mind that's always the same and never different? Or your state of mind is never affected by the ignorance of the many? Wouldn't that be neat? Wouldn't that be helpful to function in the world as Penelope or Hercules, ideally functioning through the dialectic? Even though there are so many ignorant people, some of them get into your chat really piling on this guy from chat today. But to be able to respond most excellently to those people without having your state of mind change, because it's the same in a way that's transcendent of difference, like you and your shadow. Even when the clouds come out, you're still yourself. Or another way of talking about it is the scent of a flower. Even when the wind blows, you're still the flower. And the creation of the scent, the creation of the shadow, is without even any time. It's immediate. It's not like this kind of creation, us getting a model of justice to create our laws, a model of the penultimate model for enlightenment for spiritual leaders, gurus, teachers, the model of justice to organize the parts of our soul. No, that's a creation. We have to do it. We have to take time. We have to keep reading. We have to do these diagrams. We have to reflect. We have to practice it. It's a discipline, but it's also the only real game in town. It's the funnest game.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder?
Dude? Here is where the joy and whimsy and wonder is, dude. It's different than that because it's immediate. There is our zone. There is our functioning of the higher model that transcends parts. As you do your shadow, or your reflection in the mirror, or the scent of a flower. You're the flower. You are the most beautiful flower in the world. Oh, beautiful flower in any world. Beautiful flower that transcends worldly existence. Ah, that's better. So, penultimate model. Back to the text. Diotima notes that after the experience of truth and beauty, it is not final, but penultimate. Since after that magnificent experience, Diotima notes there is something still to be done. It is incomplete. She points to the need to go further and cultivate true excellence, because that kind of excellence alone will bring one to the eternal and to become a friend of God. Ooh. However, as we suspect, she says nothing about the nature and kind of that excellence. But hey, because we know it's a monad in the monad class of selfers, that kind of reality, that kind of justice, that kind of truth. No, truth is the descriptor. One true good, the monad's beauty, excellence, justice, reality.
You'll get a bunch of views.
Thank you. So, come on, sorry. As we expect, she says nothing about the nature and kind of that excellence. nor what it would take to bring it to a level of completion. You and I would say that the excellence could only be reached by becoming Socratic, but it took later philosophers to make that point. Those later philosophers are us. The question is, should Plato have added that? We are making that point. Why? Because we've been reading this book. We have that lineage from Homer, Xenophanes, Parmenides, Diotima, Socrates, and then Plato with the fall. We murdered Socrates. We had a counterattack to the Logos before he passed on his mythology and left it to a 20-year-old Plato who just watched a teacher be murdered for bullshit teach us about Socrates. So while Plato talked about the idea of the good, or that experience of being, he said we needed to go on, and as we just read, as we expected. Why can we expect? Why can we expect Socrates not to talk about the nature of that true excellence and what's required? Because we have that lineage. So we can say this 4 and 5, functioning through beliefs, which is a pseudo model, pseudo reality, and the cause of false. So 1, true and good, applied to the monads. What's the opposite of truth? False. Of goodness, badness and harm. Goodness and benefit, badness and harm. And oneness, you're in conflict. So the false, bad, harmful model for conflict is belief. 4, functioning materialism. What's that? Aristotle. What's Aristotle? The lesser without the greater. Lesser in opposition to the greater. He was in opposition. He felt he knew better. That's why he was kicked out of the academy. Just as Chatter felt he knew better. Just as believers feel they know better. This Dunning-Kruger effect, right? The stupidest think they are the smartest. Aristotle. Aristotle is the tradition of modern philosophy. Plato talked about this penultimate model, and we need to become Socratic. So the 3 big names from Socrates taught Plato, taught Aristotle, but of course we lost midwifery and dream analysis, and then after Plato we lost metaphysics. We could say fundamentally there are 3 levels of ousia and activity, and we can use these names: Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates. We are taught Aristotelianism at school. The way they teach Plato is bullshit. It's just Aristotle. They lie. That's what the word Stoic means. They teach Stoic philosophy, which is the language of Plato applied only to the physical world or the parts with no whole. So courage is Socrates' word through Plato. How do we use it? Courage means getting up at 4 a.m. and doing push-ups and eating alpha brain, right? To tough out your life, to try and grind set your way into physical wealth. Terrible horseshit. So Aristotelian, Platonic, Socratic. The Platonic allows you to reach this model, which is penultimate, remember? And Socratic is the ultimate. It took later philosophers to make that point. We're being referenced in the book. Pretty cool. Is that pretty cool? Is that pretty dope? Do we have hella motion because we're being referenced in the book? And Jesus says, hang on, fuck, that's curious, man. Dude, that's curious. Wait. That's curious. Why would you say, says Jesus, the later philosophers discovered more about your way of being than those who were present around you? Why would we have to wait so long for these later thinkers and the kick-ass Twitch stream to see what was already there to be seen in the past. Shall we say that later philosophers' vision were not obscured by a need to add what they wanted to believe to what was being revealed? So that projection of that pseudo-reality we can recognize, and it's not blocking us because we are reading carefully, word by word, with lots of reflection and diagrams and dialectics. And we've been doing dream analysis along the way, I hope. For everyone watching, I hope. Some of you out there doing it. So not obscured by a need to add what you wanted to believe about what's being revealed. And we're not loyal to anything. People come into the chat, what are your opinions? Fuck off, nothing. Not fuck off you, fuck off opinions. I'm not loyal to any belief system. I'm not an ism. I'm like you, really, a self discovering the self. Through leaving Aristotle, mastering Plato, and becoming Socratic. Opinions are Aristotle, baby. Opinions and belief is Aristotle, baby.
The primary purpose of peanuts is not to murder, it's to eat for sustenance.
I thought so. Okay. So, that's where we are. We are left with this puzzle here. What happens here? We have an activity or use of the logos based on a model for each. And now we recognize if your model is based on physical perceptions, your activity is Aristotelian or Platonic. We want to be Socratic. We have to become Socratic. So, what is the kind of use of the logos that reflects upon its model that is a kind of meditation, allowing us to awaken not the penultimate but the ultimate model or ultimate knowingness of self that is independent and transcendent of everything else, meaning we can function heroically, Penelopean or Herculeanly, the ideal man and woman, in the realm of Hades, while having a state of mind in heaven, while being transcendent of it as the self. That's what we want. How do we use the logos here that will awaken this? The knowing of self. Know thyself. That's where we are. Well, it has to be not dialect, not debate, that's out. Some sort of dialectic that we've been developing a mastery of, but applied to not the truth or goodness or oneness, but what is necessary for that. These are the three highest terms that unify, or the three seekings of the penultimate model. We seek truth outwardly, we want goodness for ourselves, and we understand by bringing it into a oneness, which is why naming is so important. But these all imply a higher model, the true self, the good self, the one self. Just as this is the idea of the self, or self to others. So we can use the dialectic now to say, hang on a second, we need to use the self. The self is the definition. It functions as pure mind. Its disconnection into divisions is other to others. We want to go other back to self. What's the activity? How do we reach other back to self? Well, what do we learn in this progression? Each level there is an activity of the logos based on a model. That's what we take back. We take back a self-reflection or ousia and an activity. Therefore, how do we return back to the self itself? Some sort of activity of what's other. That's the logos. Back to the self. The highest kind of other, therefore, is the logos, which has to be inherent in the self for its unfoldment into ousia in logos. So there's an inherent ousia that's not this kind of ousia or a blissful beauty of all parts. a kind of inherent knowingness of self or ousia of self, and a highest activity of the logos in relation to self. So that's the highest kind of other back to self. The logos back to self. So we have to do a dialectic on the true, the good, and the one, which we can apply other back to self. That can awaken an ousia, or the model of self itself, or the knowing of self. That's our quest. That's where we're at. That's the highest functioning. That's the highest question. That's the ultimate goal of know thyself. But now we can understand it, as well as understand problems and their necessity, understand how to solve problems and the model of excellence, as well as the ultimate goal. How can we use the dialectic or logos in relation to self in the highest activity based on the not penultimate but ultimate model? The ultimate activity on the ultimate model, a kind of meditation to define the true self, the one self, and good self. How do we do that? Well, understanding it is one thing, doing it is another. How do we do it? Well, thankfully there are more pages to read, and now we spent a good deal of time, and I didn't mean to do another review today, but really worth it. We've nailed down our question. This is important. We don't want to be like Jabroni in chat saying, give me your opinions. I don't want questions and models. I'm a baby. I can't think for myself. We don't want to be like him. We want to, and I know he's not watching anymore. That sort of person doesn't stick around. We want to nail down our question. To carry a question is to be on a quest. So what do we do with our question now that we've nailed it down as best we can? Specifically, what is that activity here that allows a return other back to self, or the conclusion? Something to do with the logos, the highest activity of the logos and dialectic applied to the true, good, and one. Self. Well, we got some more pages to read, and according to Socrates, you won't be able, just as Diotima says, just as Parmenides says you can't get there without this way of thinking that we've been using, Socrates says you also can't get there unless you do dream analysis. Understand your dreams and the nature of the dream maker. So, we're taking this, the ultimate question, as we get back into the text and read about dreams. So thankfully we have the logos of this book, more pages to read, and the logos of our dreams that we'll continue to get even after we finish reading this book. So we have the question, and we have some steps to move forward. We have our goal and some actionable steps. To read about dreams, wonder about dreams, solve the puzzle of dreams and the dream maker, and to continue reading together in a book that's fun to read anyway because it is a fucking banger. Wow. Next time, I promise, we'll get into more reading, and I mean, how fun was this? And how, fuck me, how awesome is it to nail down the greatest question a human can ask? And the question where Socrates pointed us to. The ultimate question of philosophy. What exactly is the greatest activity that allows us to know self? Remember, know thyself started us off? Not being mediocrity, being content with the bullshit false model you get from childhood is the cause of problems. So let's not do that and know the self. Hey, started us off, now we're there. How do we know the self? That's where we're at. We're going to continue reading next time. I hope you're recording your dreams, even if you don't know how to unpack them. Get into practice of remembering them as soon as you wake up. Hit that record button, start talking, and you can even upload it to TurboScribe and get a transcription. Lickety split. Lick and then the split. Quick. It means quick. Lickety. Yep. Don't be disgusting.
Don't be disgusting.
Got it. Really quick. You can do that. So wonder about it. And hey, even if you don't know how to do the technique of dialectic applied to dreams yet, you can start to notice some repeating patterns and themes. That's helpful because that's the division stage. As you look at many dreams, you'll start to notice some themes cropping up that'll be helpful. So I hope you're having fun, being brave and doing something new and weird and different. Having fun with
Where's
it.
the joy? Where's the childlike?
And next time we're going to get more into dreams and keep reading and take this question with us. Oh my goodness, how much does this book bang? Thank you for joining me. Follow on Twitch, YouTube, Discord below. If you want to donate to the channel, you can, and it's very much appreciated. There's a link below, and there's a PDF link below as well to the text. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. What kind of one? See you in the next one.